Good afternoon and hello, everyone. My name is Rich Longo, and I am your host for today's presentation. And welcome to another Flycast Partners webinar. Today, our topic is on mobile security integration with hybrid cloud. A pretty important topic these days. But before we get started, let me introduce Flycast Partners. Flycast Partners offers best-in-class implementation services and training in IT service management, IT asset management, IT operations management, IT security, enterprise service management, and workload automation spaces, all using ITIL best practices. Our professional services team has well over 5,600 professional services engagements, both on-site and remote. And as a company, Flycast Partners has 1,300 regular customers all throughout Canada and the United States. I encourage you to reach out to us at 844-FLYCAST. That's 844-359-2278. You can also chat with us live on our website. We have IT experts standing by at 8:30 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. Eastern time, Monday through Friday, or you can email us at info@flycastpartners.com. Now, I'm going to introduce Flycast Partners IT security lead, Frederick. Frederick has had a plethora of experience in this space. He's been in this space for years. So Frederick Sears is our resident expert on IT security here at Flycast Partners, and he's going to introduce the rest of our panel today. And I'm turning it over to you, sir.
Rich, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. As Rich mentioned, my name is Frederick Sears. I am the security practice lead here at Flycast Partners. I'm very pleased to have with us today a couple of individuals from Lookout Security who are going to share with us their vision around mobile security and hybrid cloud, which is, as customers move further and further their applications into that space, it's a very important topic to be talking about. So we've got Ted Rumble, one of the account reps, and a senior engineer, Jeffrey Gilhool from Lookout. So Ted, you want to take it away?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks everyone for joining. Lookout obviously has made our name traditionally in the mobile endpoint, mobile threat defense space, but we've also recognized that we need to do more as the perimeters dissolved and moving into more of a zero trust model, allowing you to access those cloud-based apps, hybrid type apps, or even applications that are still sitting in your data center. So we're really building a platform that's going to allow you to take that zero trust framework and better protect the organization as a whole. So our speaker today, Jeff Gilhool, you want to introduce yourself, and then I'll let you kind of kick off the presentation from there.
Sure, thank you. So this is Jeff Gilhool. I'm a systems engineer with Lookout. I've been with the company almost 5 years and support state and local and a few public sector accounts. So as we're going through this, I'll drop in some, kind of customer use cases that we've seen, places where we've been successful, providing security for hybrid cloud environments and really, helping enable zero trust. So with that, I'm going to jump right into this. My screen should be showing. So first, I think it's important to kind of talk to the shift that's been going on, especially over the last year and a half around mobile working. Everybody was kind of forced to work from home. Everybody was forced to work and deal with their kids going to school all at the same time. And that's created quite a shift in how people do their jobs now. And what we see now is moving forward, more and more companies are looking to do remote work, if not full-time, part-time. So we're seeing organizations change how they're handling work. They saw that everybody was able to get their jobs done while working from home, and started assessing, cost of real estate and, maintaining offices in expensive cities. So there's been a shift, and mobile work has become more and more important to companies and other organizations, moving forward. And that introduces a lot of new risk that the organizations have to deal with. So one of the slide made me laugh just because 97% of IT leaders, thought that remote working was more risky than working from the office, and the other 3 obviously don't have kids running around their house. But I think this is part of the challenge that organizations have to understand. Working from home, you're on networks that you don't control. You're potentially on devices that you don't control or manage. So there is more risk to the organization. Folks want to be able to work on whatever device they have. Mobile has become a bigger and bigger part of that. So folks are on a phone or a tablet that has the same access as a work laptop. So, it's becoming more of a concern that organizations have to deal with, and they're recognizing that. So, 40% of companies see mobile devices as their biggest security threat, and over half have actually experienced some kind of compromise based on a mobile-related security concern. So, this is something that's happening now and something that needs to be addressed, and Lookout's uniquely positioned to help with that. The other piece of this is, these devices are trusted devices, but they're not always used the way they should be. So companies are seeing their users are part of the problem when a compromise occurs. Social engineering is a key part of this. Phishing is a huge part of it. The amount of phishing has just tripled over the last year. And what we see is that a lot of it's starting to target mobile devices. And there's reasons for that. Mobile users are a lot more likely to click on a link. The numbers I've seen are 3 times more likely to click on a link. I talked to a university in Virginia that had run through internal testing, and what they saw was 80% of their click-through on their internal tests occurred on iOS. So phishing is becoming a huge problem, and it's even more significant on mobile devices. And then, you just get bad behavior. Over half users have handed off their laptop to a friend or family member to allow them to use. I have personal experience with this one going back years and years ago, BlackBerry days. My toddler got a hold of my BlackBerry, replied all to 2,000 engineers at the company that I was working at with the letter W. So, I didn't mean for him to get it. I don't know why it wasn't locked, but he got on there and sent a message to the whole company just about with the letter W, which led to all sorts of questions coming in. So, you've got to be careful with the devices and who's accessing them and being able to understand the behavior of those users. And then, there's other parts of it. If a user's accessing on a mobile device, they probably have their own personal applications on that device as well. And what we see is 1 in 25 device or applications are leaking credentials or information. So all of these are part of the concern around mobile devices and how to secure it. So, I think this is more on the end user facing side of it. There's a lot of things that need to be addressed with the devices that the users are coming in on. And then there's a whole other piece of it, around where the data sits and how the organization manages and protects that. So I'll run through some of the security concerns around where your applications are running and how you protect that data, and then we'll try to pull it all together, at the end of the presentation.
Hey, Jeff.
Yes.
Before to kind of chime in on the trusted devices piece, if I could add into that is, we talk about the Internet of Things, and organizations, as they look at remote networks and where people are coming in, they have to look at the things that are coming onto their home networks. A good example is recently the Washington Post just published something where somebody attacked a casino in Las Vegas, and they actually came through the Wi-Fi that was attached to the fish tank that was being monitored in the casino. So, people need to think that they need to think beyond just the traditional devices and everything else.
Agreed. That's a great point. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Sorry to.
No, please interrupt at any point. I tend to run on at the mouth and not take breaths. So it's the interruptions are appreciated. So going back to the challenges around securing, cloud applications and on-premise applications, I think we touched on users are working from anywhere. And another use case for that is somebody working from Starbucks. I did it last week where I sat in a Starbucks on their network and ran through some meetings. And that introduces other concerns, is that network that I'm connected to safe? So there's a lot of things around the end user and how they're working that need to be addressed. And mobile threat defense is a great solution for all of those pieces. But then on the organizational side, more and more organizations are adopting cloud-based services. That completely changes how you secure your applications and your data. And it's a significant shift for organizations to take on. And while they're doing that, they still have, on-premise applications that they have to manage. So, the goal here is really to be able to provide a single solution that provides a common user interface and experience that applies the same policies. What you really care about in these environments is the data that's being accessed. So you want to make sure that you can set policies to restrict access to that data and enforce privacy controls on it, no matter where it sits. And that's something, again, it's a big shift that's been going on over the last few years. And you need to look for solutions that will help you pull both of those together, SaaS-based applications, cloud-based applications, and those on-premise applications. And then, I'd already talked to this one, but, devices and networks are no longer in your control. So you need to make sure that, the connections that the devices are making are secured and protected. And you're also limiting those devices to only the applications that user and device should have access to. So, these are all key considerations and a shift from how we traditionally handled things with firewall rules. The other considerations to look at, this data is moving around from cloud to on-prem to, between devices, and, the user is kind of the common theme here. So you need to have an understanding of the data that they're accessing, whether there's sensitive information in it, and then be able to enforce policies on it to protect that data, depending on the device and the user and what's going on in that circumstance. And there's a number of different controls I'll talk to as we run through this. And then the last piece of it, legacy access, traditional access to applications that are on-premise has been through a VPN. And that typically has been open the VPN client, connect to the network, and then access anything that you can touch, which isn't effective. And we also saw with COVID, organizations couldn't scale up to meet the requirements that they had for VPN access. And there's a better way to do that, where you're only allowing access to specific applications, not the full network. And that, again, is a control point that really allows you to kind of enable zero trust. So these are some of the big requirements for managing the data in your applications. First, you have to know where it's sitting. You have to be able to identify the clouds that are in use, whether they're sanctioned or unsanctioned, and then you want to be able to put controls in place to make sure that the data the user is accessing is being handled properly. The next big decision point that you need to enforce is access. You want to be able to dynamically allow access to the applications and data based on who the user is. So you need to accurately identify that user. You also want to know the device they're on, whether it's managed, whether there's any risk associated with that device. And then you want to look at location-based information, user behavior. There's a lot of different context that should be used to make those access decisions before you even allow the user in. And that's something, I've worked with the state customer to do exactly this. We have a deployment within the state where when the user goes to access email, shared drives, collaboration tools, before they do that, we provide the device health for that device, and then the decision to allow them access is made. And if there's a risk on the device, there's all sorts of restrictions that are enforced to make sure that no data is exposed while that risk exists on the device. So the access piece is a key part of that, and you want to make sure that you have device health as one of the decision points when you're granting access. The other pieces that we're looking at, you want to make sure that no malware or viruses are introduced to the environment. It seems common sense, but with users interacting with SaaS applications, you need to have a control point where you can see what data they're trying to upload and make sure that it's safe. And you also, again, want to look at the user behavior. If you see changes in behavior, if you suddenly see a user that's consistently worked in the DC area pop up somewhere in Asia, you want to question whether or not that should happen and elevate risks so you can enforce different policies, which kind of leads into the protection piece. There's some key parts of that. You want to understand the risk profile of the user and device. You also want to understand the sensitivity of the data so that you can combine all of that information and enforce policy. So if I'm on a personal device and I try to download sensitive information, there's a policy that either enforces encryption on it or it redacts the sensitive information from the download that I'm starting off with. So the protection piece is important, and it really requires an understanding of the sensitivity of the data and be able to enforce policy there. And all of that, really leads to the compliance piece. Every organization has got different compliance policies they have to meet. Understanding data sensitivity and being able to protect sensitive data is a key part of most compliance policies. And you need to be able to show that and enforce rules to protect data. So the great thing is, you can find solutions that'll do this. Lookout can help you secure from the endpoint to cloud. Key parts of that are the continuous monitoring. You want to make sure you've identified the user and the device is healthy, and continue to do that. Any change in the device health is reflected in the access decisions that are made. So context-aware access is really looking at all of the information you have around the user device, the data that they're trying to access, and being able to consistently apply policies to whether or not you're going to allow that access. And this goes back to, you want to be able to enforce the same policies for cloud-based applications as well as your on-prem applications. The consistency of the user experience is important here as well. Multiple layers of identification and encryption, that one gets into, do you have multi-factor authentication in place? Is the user doing something that's unusual? Do you want to verify through multi-factor? So you can do step-up authentication, or you can enforce encryption or redaction on the data that user is trying to access. So those policies need to step in and protect the data, based on what they're seeing with the user and device. And then the last piece, it's important for these mobile endpoints that you can have the user be part of the solution. Organizations can have thousands and tens of thousands of mobile applications. You don't want to have to babysit each and every device. If there's an issue on it, you need to have the user as part of the remediation path. And that's something that Lookout is, again, uniquely positioned to help with. We've got 200 million applications or devices that are protected, and we have great experience around walking the user through how to remediate a threat. And then for the organization, it becomes very helpful because, once the user has a threat flagged on their device once or twice, they start to learn that the behavior they're doing is bad. They need to stop loading these applications from this third-party app store or whatever they're doing. So they start to exhibit better behavior. So, I think that piece can't be overlooked, especially when you're talking about mobile devices, because there's so many mobile endpoints out there that organizations have to deal with. So as you're moving towards zero trust.
Real quick, I want to add too that the self-remediation on the platform is a huge time saver for the administrative, as we all know, all IT departments, we never have enough resources to manage all the different solutions out there. So we're really kind of trying to give you guys back time too, and at the same time, training the end users, around what your security policies are and how they should be, observing, certain sites that they're going to and changing their behavior as a whole.
Yeah, and an example of that is we have a customer in the public sector that has over 100,000 devices that they're protecting, and they didn't have to add anybody to the device management team to add security on top of those devices. So self-remediation is a key enabler for that, and it's one of those, most organizations are really struggling to meet all the requirements, and you need to make it as easy as possible for the administrators to maintain the security. And a lot of it too goes back to that context-aware access. If you can enforce policies based on a finding, an administrator doesn't have to be there to chase that user around and address it. You can protect the data while the finding is active and help the user remove that threat that's been identified.
Yep, that real-time remediation is just so critical.
Yep. So, moving towards zero trust and, rolling in kind of the modern workforce and how things have changed, there's some key requirements that you need to look at. First and foremost, you want to control access to all your corporate apps and data. That's kind of a no-brainer for zero trust. You want to assume no access and granted only when required. So doing that and making sure that your cloud applications are configured securely and protected is a key part of this. Privacy becomes more and more important as you're looking at remote workers. Especially if you're looking to enable BYOD, you need to make sure that you're still protecting user privacy while maintaining security on the environment. Protecting the devices, becomes more important when you're talking about remote workforce, and that BYOD is kind of the pie in the sky goal that folks are moving towards. But you need to really make sure that you can guarantee the security of those devices when you're doing it. And again, there's some key enablers that allow that to happen. The state that I work with, has those ties into their state managed email, so that if a user's coming in on any device, they have to check in as a secure and healthy device before they're allowed access. So all of those are key components in trying to move towards zero trust and still have a modern workplace, with, potentially remote users on their own personal devices. I'm going to run through a couple quick how it works slides. One of the big things, you want to be able to control that access to data and applications. For Lookout, we have a security graph that's pulling telemetry on millions of devices. We're inspecting the applications on those devices. We're providing protection for the device connecting to websites, stopping phishing attacks before they happen. All of those are really important in making sure the device is healthy before that device is allowed to access, any information. And if there is a risk on it, enforce those restrictions to make sure that the data is safe. One of the others, is around privacy and compliance. And here, one of the big things is understanding, again, the sensitivity of the data and being able to enforce rules specific to sensitive data. If I'm on an unmanaged device, should I be allowed to download customer social security numbers or credit card numbers or health information? And being able to enforce policies based on that context are very important. So Lookout can go in and flag the data that's being accessed and make sure that it meets all of the requirements before that data is allowed down to that device. And again, device risk is going to be a big part of this. We also want to consider user behavior, and location of the device. There's a number of factors that roll into this. But the goal here is really looking at the sensitive data and making sure you have rules in place to protect that. Whether it's through encryption on the device, outright blocking access to that information on a device, or redacting information before it's downloaded. In terms of the protection at the device level, Lookout installs on an app that runs in the background, alerts the user when a threat's detected, and that goes back to that remediation process. We want the end user to know that the threat's present and have them be part of the remediation path. When we're talking about phishing, which is by far the most common detection that a user is going to see on mobile, we just want to outright block those connections and stop anything bad from happening. Because the majority of the advanced threats that Lookout's identified start with phishing. The user will be socially engineered and then they'll install an application on their phone. So we want to get in front of all of that and make sure that device stays healthy. So those are all key considerations from the mobile endpoint security side, making sure that it's protected from any threat, including walking into Starbucks and connecting to that network. You want to make sure nobody's spoofing that network and intercepting the traffic. So all of those are key considerations when you're looking at the device itself. And then, BYOD, in the organizations I talk to, folks are either trying to avoid it altogether or they have half-formed policies towards moving towards BYOD. I think organizations are attracted to the idea because it gets you out of owning the devices and, that reoccurring cost. But BYOD comes with its own issues. So, I think the approach that Lookout took for this is, if I'm on my personal device, I'm not forced to have security installed on that, but if I try to get to the organization's data, there's going to be a policy that steps in and says, you must have security activated on your device, and it must check in at a minimum risk level before I'm allowed to access any data. So BYOD is something that's now possible, and still, have an understanding of the security of the device before it comes in. And again, it's not that you're mandating, security on the personal device, but if that person wants to access the organization's data, they need to check in at a minimum risk level. So this is another key thing, and I think we're going to see more of it. I think organizations are starting to look at it and evaluate whether or not they can meet BYOD and still provide security, and that's something that Lookout can definitely help with. So I'm going to wrap up in just a couple slides. There's a number of use cases that Lookout can help with. Ransomware is something that everybody's seeing more and more. Data leakage via collaboration. We want to make sure that no data is shared inappropriately, and that the users that are accessing the data are the ones that should be accessing it. Insider threats is also a consideration. We want to make sure that nobody's got malicious intent. One of the use cases, I work with Salesforce all the time, and what I've seen over and over again is when a user's getting ready to leave a company, they'll go into Salesforce and pull down as much information as they can. You want to be able to understand that and stop things like that from happening. And then, compromised accounts and devices are obviously also key considerations. There you want to understand the user's normal behavior, flag any anomalies, and change the risk associated with that user if you see something. And same is true with the device. If you see any change in risk, you want to enforce different policies on that device. And I'll run through a quick use case that kind of talks to both insider threat and data leakage. The threat is the user trying to download a report, has sensitive data, credit card information is in that report, and they're on a personal device. And of course, that device also has malware. So immediately based on the malware, you're probably going to want to have a policy that just outright blocks, that download to that device. And the other part that you want to make sure is that device isn't able to upload any malware. So, it's important to have a solution that's going to identify the malware and prevent it from spreading. That gets into the ransomware use cases as well. So that's a big part of the protections that we can provide. If you take the malware out of the picture, you still have a user that's downloading a sensitive report to a personal device. That's also a questionable behavior. There you may enforce encryption on that report. So they can download it to their personal device, but it remains encrypted on that device. And they're going to have to authenticate to unlock that application or that data and look at it. So you want to be able to have tiers of policies that protect the organization and the data. And lookout solutions can help with all of that. The adaptive access control is really looking at the context around the user and device and the sensitivity of the data and applying those policies. DLP and DRM are really around protecting that information, making sure that it's secured if it's on a personal device so that the organization doesn't have to worry about data loss. And then, antivirus, anti-malware is always going to be a key consideration no matter what platform you're on. You want to make sure that the device is healthy and not introducing malware to the larger organization. Yep.
So Jeff, question for you on this is, this sounds, as you're kind of going through this specific use case, this sounds, in addition to the technology solution, this also comes across to me as sounding like a security awareness or a people awareness from a cyber side program. How, am I reading that correctly? Is Lookout also providing that kind of context with the controls that it's putting in place?
Yeah, it's something, I think that's one of the really nice things with Lookout solution, especially when you're talking about cloud access or on-premise access. You can set up policies that apply to everything and are consistently enforced. And those policies can just be notifications to the user. Hey, you're about to do this. Understand the risk associated with that, all the way through identifying threats and putting protections in place when that happens. And then in terms of the endpoint protection, there you're getting immediate feedback to the user anytime they've done something that introduces risk. So I think there's a good amount of being able to educate users and provide different levels of protection and different levels of response based on the risk and the sensitivity of the information you're trying to access.
Right, because it goes all to about, again, trying to change the behavior and making the user part of the solution, as opposed to just the technology. The technology is not going to be able to do it completely by itself. It needs to be a combined effort. So.
Yep. No, okay. And that's something that I see with the customers that are running mobile endpoint protection. We typically see a lot of detections on the initial deployment, and then those start to reduce because the users start to learn better behavior. So in terms of like loading bad applications and things like that, you typically see better behavior the longer the protection's running. What's interesting is I don't necessarily see that with phishing protection. I work with an organization that has 5,000 mobile devices protected, and they typically see between 1,000 and 2,000 phishing detections every month. And that number doesn't seem to lower. So, we can definitely help with some of the education. I think that the phishing piece is always going to be a problem, especially when you're talking about mobile. There's just so many ways of the links getting in front of the user, and the users just don't understand how to look at those and inspect those links before they click on them. They just happily click away and go to those sites. So there, the lookout protection of stopping the connection from even happening is very important.
Right. Thanks.
Yep. So I think I have just a couple more things to run through. So, in terms of keys to zero trust, everybody's seen these. There's different pieces that are tough for organizations to manage. In terms of identities, like you need to identify the users accurately, as well as identify the services and applications that they're trying to get to. So, in the identity space, there's a number of companies that are out there like enabling single sign-on and multi-factor authentication for that. You want to be able to tie into those. In terms of device risk, that's really where you need to have an understanding across all of the platforms, whether or not a device is healthy enough to be able to access information. This is where, things start to get more difficult, especially when you talk about mobile. Mobile security tends to be forgotten. Folks will deploy a device management solution and think, okay, I'm good. My device is locked down and healthy. And really that device management solution is setting some policies to make sure there's a PIN code and the device is encrypted, but it's not looking at the applications that are installed and whether they're risky. It's not looking at the websites that the device is connecting to. So device risk and being able to attest to the health of the device is key to zero trust. You want to be able to accurately identify the user and make sure the device they're on is healthy. When you're talking about applications, you want to limit the access to the applications on a need-to-know basis. Not giving blanket access to the applications. You also want an understanding of the applications the users are connecting to, so you can better protect the data behind those applications. So that's a key part of being able to do zero trust, and that's really where you need a cloud access solution or a zero trust solution that can provide that protection for those applications and that understanding. And then when you get into data, that's really the whole goal of zero trust is protecting the data. So you need to understand what data is sensitive and be able to enforce policies to protect that. And some of the key parts of that is just being able to go out and identify data. If somebody scanned a document and it has social security numbers, you need a solution that's going to be able to find those social security numbers in a scanned document and assign a sensitivity to that document. So all of those are big pieces. When you're talking infrastructure, you're looking at cloud access as well as on-premise or infrastructure as a service. If you're running virtual machines in someone else's data center, you need to be able to secure all of those different environments and consistently apply policies. And then on the network side, you just have to go into it assuming you have no control over the network the user's running on, and make sure that the connections they make to your applications and services are secured and they're only limited to the ones they should be seeing. And I've got this eye chart at the end to kind of show the Lookout security platform and the different pieces that we have to enable that. On the left side is really going to be more around endpoint protection. And then, from the middle over to the right is really around how you secure cloud access, zero trust access, understanding the user behavior. All of these things are key parts of providing that zero trust protection for an organization. So I'll pause again for any questions or comments.
No, we don't have any current questions right now. However, we did have some comments. We have a couple of folks that have requested a copy of the deck. Folks, we're not going to send out a copy of the deck, but we will give you a copy of this video link. So we'll make sure our team gets that out to you. So if you want that, go ahead and email us at info@flycastpartners.com, or you can email david.apple@flycastpartners.com. He'll make sure you get it. If there are any last minute questions, now's the time to ask, folks. We have the experts on right now. They're happy to answer any questions you have. I want to thank you very much for a great presentation, Jeff. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, no, appreciate the time. And, I think the one thing I would throw, while I've got this security platform up here, one of the things to remember is, these are all different security modules that are part of it. So if your organization already has some of these protections in place, but are missing others, that's kind of the beauty of the security platform. We can use the modules that you need while leveraging, the infrastructure that you already have in place. So, don't think it's a all or nothing kind of a thing. You can pick and choose the pieces that really apply to your organization and where you have gaps in your security.
Awesome. Thank you.
Just to tag onto that, Jeff, it's exactly right. You know, the security industry really is about they've come around to leveraging the best of breed, and you know, platforms are developed for integration across. So you know, that's where Flycast as a partner can come in and bring those solutions to you. So don't forget to keep that in mind.
So with that being said, I'm going to thank everyone that participated today, everyone that took time out of your busy schedule in IT to attend our presentation. I understand schedules are hectic out there, so we appreciate any time you can spend with us. We will make sure that we follow up with you and get a link out to this video. If you have any questions, please reach out to us at 844-FLYCAST. That's 844-359-2278. That's flycastpartners.com. Visit the website, chat with us live Monday through Friday during normal business Eastern time hours. We have IT experts standing by to help you get data sheets, white papers, any information you might be looking for, demos, trials, whatever that looks like for you and your organization, or just asking questions. You can email us at info@flycastpartners.com. With that being said, I'm going to thank all the members of our panel today for participating. Thank you so much, Frederick, for introducing everybody, and Ted and Jeff, once again, thanks for your time. I'm going to wish everyone a safe rest of your week. Please stay safe out there until our next presentation. We'll see you then.
Thank you, folks.